Hello and welcome to the first edition of Thrive, where Wellbeing Converges, our brand new podcast and your new source for expert advice on mental health and wellbeing. My name is Curtis and today we're joined by Lindy Cook. Hi Lindy, thank you for joining us and for being our very first guest. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks for inviting me as your first guest. It's a bit of an honour. I am a naturopath and a nutritionist, and I've worked with Converge for years, many years actually. My background is I worked in clinic for many years with patients, obviously diverse range of health issues. Diet has always been quite a passion for me, and keeping on top of all the latest research on how our diet impacts our health and well-being and of course our mood is something I've taken a deep interest in. So I've really done a deep dive there and across all the latest research. So these days I focus a lot on talking in the workplace, talking to the workplace about health-related issues, I guess. And my biggest goal really is inspiring people to make the change that will actually improve their health and well-being, but also get them to understand their why. Why is it that they should make that change and how will it benefit them? So, my goal again is always at the end of any session, people are motivated to go, okay, I've got some concrete ideas here, practical tips, and I'm going to start implementing those and make them feel achievable.
Brilliant. Well, that segues really nicely into the first question. So, is nutrition and mental well-being linked? And if so, how is that linked?
It's a great question, and it's one that there's a huge amount of research going on in the world about right now. And in fact, one of the things that makes me happiest is knowing a lot of this research actually started in Melbourne. It was kicked off by a scientist called Dr. Felice Jacka. She's set up the Food and Mood Centre, which is run out of Geelong in Melbourne, which is great. And she was the first person really to study that link between diet and mental health and proved there was a link. So it's now backed up all over the world. We've got research going on in, from places like Norway to the UK to the US to Japan, etc. So it's very evidence-based. But if we want to understand it, I think we have to go back and, really look at gut health and have a bit of an understanding about that. So our microbiome, which is, any cavity in the body, is made up of trillions and trillions of bacteria. And this bacteria is as individual to you as your fingerprint. And one of our goals really is to ensure that our microbiome is as healthy and as diverse as it can be. So you want to think of it like a tropical rainforest, let's say, that it's got all these different species in it, and that is a sign of a good, healthy microbiome. What's been found is that within this microbiome, it actually communicates with the brain. So we now call the gut our second brain. So there's this bi-directional link between the gut and the brain. And so if one is kind of underactive or subactive in its function, then it will impact the other. So within the gut, we also know that we manufacture a whole lot of different neurotransmitters. So that can range from serotonin. I think that's the one that we know the most about, or you're likely to have heard of. So we make about 80 to 90% in our gut, neurotransmitters like dopamine as well. So serotonin's our feel-good neurotransmitter. It helps boost our mood. Dopamine is sort of involved in that reward center. It helps pick us up. So clearly our food becomes like the fodder to help manufacture these neurotransmitters. So we do want to ensure what we're putting into our bodies creates the right environment for this good bacteria in our gut to thrive, right? So what we don't want is that wrong sort of bacteria that causes inflammation to overtake. So one of our, key objectives would be to keep inflammation down in our gut and in our body, because we do know that inflammation underlies all disease and is also associated with any sort of mood disorder as such. So yes, big link there. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. So,
Yeah.
in terms then of those inflammations affecting those generations of dopamine and all that sort of good stuff that keeps us mentally fit and resilient,
Sure.
what can we sort of do to keep that inflammation down?
Right. It's, again, really good question. So, obviously there's lifestyle factors. Exercise is one. Getting enough sleep is another. Walking. We say sitting is the new, smoking, really. So getting your body moving. But diet. So in terms of our diet, what's happening in the Western world is we're eating too many processed foods. So be it too much processed fats, too much sugar, too much salt, etc. The other thing that a lot of research is being done on is something called ultra processed foods, or we call them UPFs. So, and all of these will increase inflammation and cause issues in your body. And just a quick note on these ultra processed foods, or UPFs. The best way to determine if you're getting them in your body is actually to, just take a little bit of time and to start to read labels. So it's a difficult one to sort of define, but perhaps the easiest way is to go, okay, anything on a food label that you look at and you think, okay, I don't know what that is, and I'm not likely to have that in my cupboard. That's the broadest way of looking at it. That is considered an ultra-processed food. So you might find them in things like from, ice cream, sodas, a lot of rice, packet foods, but also there's sneaky foods like muesli bars, etc. And what they do they will increase your potential for morbidity, overall morbidity, by about 40% plus. So increased risk of heart attacks, cancers, strokes, etc. So, and of course weight, and that's something we want to bring down as well. So a good whole food diet, where you're focusing on, what's real, you're keeping the ingredients in foods down to, the less the best. And you're going, okay, is that food something my grandmother would have made, that old one?
Yeah.
Seems quite helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms then, what are some of the most common issues that you see when patients approach you with their poor mental well-being, and how is that then linked to maybe their diet or their nutritional differences?
Yeah, so in terms of poor mental well-being, there's a few things that I find are quite linked to that. And again, there's a lot of study going on into this. There's often a link between IBS and anxiety and depression. And it makes sense when you think about, okay, if the gut has got this overgrowth of inflammatory bacteria, then, you've got that bi-directional link between the gut and the brain. So potentially if you suffer from IBS, you're making poorer diet choices. It may be, you've had too much sugar, you're not getting enough fibre, and so on. So looking at your diet more carefully, talking with someone who can just give you some simple strategies to do that makes a big difference. Poor sleep is another thing that might, clearly go hand in hand. And I think we all know that feeling when we haven't had enough sleep. I know personally, you feel a bit more vulnerable, don't you? So, and again, the microbiome it's all seems to be is linked to sleep. So serotonin will help produce melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. So if your gut's not as good, or even if you're not getting enough sleep at night, if you're not getting that 8 hours, that impacts your gut microbiome, which it's like a vicious cycle. Then you're making less of the hormones that you need to get good sleep. Another thing might be you're just not getting enough exposure to light. So another new area of research is this, exposure to morning light and how that can impact your mood and your sleep. So what we want to be doing is getting out in the morning and really seeing the sun for a good 15 minutes or so without our sunglasses on. You might want to sit outside and have a coffee. I know it's hard, at the moment. So maybe go for a walk rather than sitting, because it's pretty cold in Melbourne at the moment. But that exposure to light sort of switches on this cascade of hormones that will, help with mental health, and even energy and sleep and the whole cycle. So there's numerous things. And again, of course, poorer diet choices, not organising, making a plan to ensure you've got good foods on hand can also help.
Yeah. Definitely. Because there's always this cause and effect, isn't there? It's like poor sleep. You probably then haven't got the energy to come home and start cooking a meal, and actually go. So you start going down the route of going down those processed fat sort of foods and all those sorts of things.
Yes.
What kind of foods would you recommend then for our listeners if they're wanting to sort of induce better sleep routines, better patterns, and obviously there's that linkage? What could they sort of change in their diets?
Yeah, definitely. Again, and this is where Dr. Felice Jacka, what her research found is that the Mediterranean-style diet reduces anxiety and depression. So this is, again, evidence-based. And this was even in patients that had difficult to treat anxiety and depression. And one of the great things about that is it's safe to take alongside medication. So I would never say just come off your medication and eat good food only. Like, this is really safe to do. You can talk about it with your GP. But so this Mediterranean style diet tends to be very rich in anti-inflammatory foods. So, there's lots of plant-based foods, lots of veggies, always seems to be a lot of nuts as well. So I'd recommend a good handful of nuts or two every day. Unsalted, I will say. Don't add the salt in there because salt disrupts your microbiome as much as sugar. You want to be looking at plenty of good fats. So good fats are really important for gut health, but also for our brain. Like, our brain is made up of something like 70% fat. It's really interesting. So, so getting a little bit more fish and nuts and seeds in can be really efficacious in treating mood disorders as well. So I guess overall, I tend to sort of go, okay, if you want a clear picture of what that may look like for you, it might be that you go, okay, I'm aiming to have 2 different serves of fruit every day. I'm going to aim to have a good 5 to 6 serves of vegetables every day, and vary the type and colour. I'll come back to that in a minute. More plant-based foods as well. As I've said, fibre seems to be really critical for gut health as well. So getting about 30 grams of fibre per day. They seem to be, really general things. And of course, eating for gut health. Fermented foods, a big one. I would say in terms of fermented foods, try and have at least 1 serve every day, and this will support and build up that good bacteria in your gut. So fermented foods actually contain living bacteria. You've got things like, really good quality yogurt, not the one with added sugar though, please. That's actually a really sneaky, it's advertising, isn't it? It sneaks the sugar in. I tend to have kefir or kefir, whichever one you want to say, whichever way you say it, which is a fermented milk drink. You can buy it at the supermarket now.
Is that like Yakult? Those sorts of drinks?
Yakult is actually just it's more like a probiotic. So a fermented one might be, I'm just thinking without, it's more, it's a liquidy sort of drink, really. I buy Table of Plenty as an example at the supermarket, and it's got way more good bacteria than even yogurt. And then you've got things like kombucha, sauerkraut. Try and put a serve of sauerkraut on the side of your lunch every day or dinner. I try and do that. Kombucha, that fermented drink, and good real whole food. So any food, if it goes mouldy, if you leave it out and it goes mouldy, it means, that's a really good sign it's got living bacteria in it. If it doesn't, then it's dead food. So
that's a great rule.
Yeah, it's a really easy one. So artisanal cheeses, they can be good. Whereas the pizza cheese, let's say you buy the packet cheese, it's I'm going to call it dead because it has no living bacteria.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. And is there any specific nuts that you can sort of recommend? Obviously, there's a plethora of them out there. Is there any sort of specific ones you could recommend?
So, top of the tree seems to be walnuts because they are highest in those good fats, those omega-3s. And they're actually shaped like the brain if you have a look at them, which is really interesting. So, there often is this little bit of, you look at nature and it can give you a rough guide, let's say. And then there's things like Brazil nuts, which are really high in selenium. So we know our soils are depleted in selenium, and a deficiency in selenium is associated with autoimmune diseases like cancers, etc. But across the board, just try to vary the nuts. Like I tend to have, at the moment, I've got a thing for roasted pistachios, not in their shells, but I'll have a good handful of mixed nuts as well. So what I do want to say is dietary variety is one of those keys for gut health and therefore mental health. So you want to be aiming for 30 different types of plant-based foods per week, which seems kind of crazy, I know. Even CSIRO would recommend that now. But once you start mixing things up, it gets a bit easier. So you might want to go, okay, instead of just a green veg, spinach, I'm going to maybe have silver beet and bok choy and endive or chicory, different salad greens, different fruits, aim to eat the rainbow of colour. And just bumping up those plant-based foods as well. So plant-based foods, I know it all gets confusing and there's a lot of information to absorb, but that would include things like nuts and seeds. And by seeds, I might also include chia seeds or hemp seeds, fruit, vegetables, all the good fats, olive oil. Olive oil is a winner when it comes to gut health and mental health as well. So you want to get, a really good, 2 tablespoons or about even up to 30 ml of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil every day, because it helps heal your gut and it's really good for, even preventing things like cognitive decline and so on, but really good for mental health. And so if we, I'm always going, okay, we think about mental health, but we trace, where do we go back to, cause and effect, as you said.
Definitely. And I know you alluded to it earlier, to do with the different colours, the different vibrancies on your plate. Can you speak a little bit more about that? So obviously, you've talked about the greens and the different colours there. What does that sort of mean then?
So every different colour will have different phytonutrients and antioxidants that will play a different role in dampening down that inflammatory response in the body, and also specific actions within the body on health and well-being. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say carrots, orange, and they're rich in, so you've got orangey, yellow fruit and veggies, and they're rich in beta-carotene. And so we know that beta-carotene is really good for cell turnover. So it helps with that, and mucus lining. So let's say you've got a cold, sinus congestion, cough, you've got the lung lining involved. A bit more, of that beta-carotene colour can help. Lycopene, so that is the antioxidant we find in red veggie, it's a fruit actually, tomatoes. Really good for the prostate in men. So we do know, the prostate loves, the lycopene and also really good fats. And so all this, getting that rainbow of colour overall is going to decrease your overall inflammatory response and help you maintain your immune system and also support your mental health and well-being. And again, like thinking of your immune system, we've got, 70 to 80%. Again, we find it in our gut. So, the fact that food is as medicine is so true, because whatever you're putting in there impacts, your immune system, your mental health, your sleep, your metabolism, the whole deal. So, for me, I'm always coming back to, well, what's my motivation? Why do I choose that food over that food? And it's actually, I go, I know the knock-on impact it's going to have, and I want to live a long, healthy life. So anyway, I'm covering lots when I talk about, eating that rainbow of colour, but the impact is so broad and so important that, it's really good to think about it across your day.
Definitely. So for our listeners, it's go out there and get as many different coloured foods on that plate as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you might get it. So with your sandwich, don't just make it ham and cheese, let's say as an example, or Vegemite. Make it, chicken, avocado, beetroot, carrot, alfalfa. Amazing, and it tastes good too. To me it's always tastes a bit better. So and mix it up. Don't make it the same thing every day either. Just I can be a bit guilty of it as well. I like cooking in bulk because I get sick of cooking, same as...
Don't we all?
Yeah, don't we all? But, I put a million things in there. So I've got lots of colour in my bulk cooking, and then I'll have a few on the go. So...
Brilliant. So I suppose for a lot of people as well, we just don't have that time to sort of stand around in the kitchen and the oven, making those different, plethoras of different colours. So I suppose, is vitamins and those other, like the minerals and stuff like that you can buy, are they good alternatives just to introduce to your day?
Sure.
And if so, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I'm always going to say food first because, food is a whole synergistic component of antioxidants and nutrients and vitamins and minerals that, help support each other in their action and absorption and so on. And I do think, first of all, you want to find ways to make it, to simplify, let's say. So you're getting that good food in without too much effort. And Curtis, I am exactly the same as the next person. I might be a nutritionist, but I'm not the best cook. My husband would attest to that. My daughters will attest to that. But I do make sure that I cook really simple things to get food in. So I guess I'll address this in two parts. First of all, I'd say try and get organised. So if you do want to change habits, it's not magically going to happen. What you might want to do is do a bit of a plan for the week ahead. Make sure you've got the foods on hand that you need. Have a couple of simpler recipes that you like and put that, so okay, I can manage that. If there are nights when you're going to get home, you're going to have to work late, or you've got a class, or you're going to a film after work and whatever it might be, and, the easiest thing is to get takeout, pull out something frozen or do your bulk cooking thing. So a bit of pre-planning, a bit of, doing double, when you're cooking at night, you might make enough for lunch the next day. So some simple things like that. But coming back to the nutrients, I guess if I think about it in terms of what's important for mental health, because they're also important, if I want to sort of, dilute it down to that, there's a few that I would say are kind of critical. Vitamin D is one that comes up, and I think we're all across that in terms of our immune system. But not only is it important for our immune system, it's important for cardiovascular health, gut health, and mental health. So when our levels are low, we tend to have poorer mental health. So that might be one that I'd go, okay, you can get that tested. You can see, where your levels are at. And if you're low, supplement. Again, we do know it's better to get it through diet and the sunlight, but we live in Melbourne, so it's not always possible. But through diet, you could get it with things like a bit of fatty fish, butter, and dairy, right? So keep an eye on it. I would say you don't want your levels to fall under 70, when you're getting that result back. Other key sort of nutrients, and one that I can supplement with a bit, but I do want to say in terms of supplements, never just buy off the shelf because you think it's right. Talk to a qualified person. There's I'm going to talk about magnesium now, and there's many different kinds that have different actions. And but that said, actually magnesium will support the absorption of vitamin D, just coming back. So if you find it hard to absorb vitamin D, you may need more magnesium. So magnesium, I think about as kind of your nervous system's best friend, right? Deficiency signs might be that horrible under eye twitch, we all get, and you feel like everyone can see. I hate that. It might be insomnia. low energy. It's also involved in that energy production cycle within the body. I guess, cramps as well. So they can be deficiency signs for magnesium. Having a handful of nuts every day can help. Raw cacao is actually really the highest whole food source of magnesium. And what might make you happy to know is that, dark chocolate is the highest whole food source. It's got raw cacao in it. And I love dark chocolate, so a little bit of dark chocolate might help, but it does need to be low sugar, so under 5 grams per serve. So magnesium is one of those that you might go, potentially, if you're not getting enough through, nuts and seeds, green leafy veggies, whole grains, that you need to supplement. That's a question mark. Another one is zinc, that, in terms of mental health, we do find that it tends to be lower in people with mental health issues like, anxiety and depression. Deficiency signs may be, and it may not happen, but it may be you're getting those white spots on your fingernails, poor skin healing, acne. It could also be just lower immune function. It's really important for gut health again, for immune functioning. And, you're looking at things like pumpkin seeds, again, whole grains, legumes will have some, but these are question mark areas that a qualified person can help you with. And of course, I've mentioned essential fatty acids already and how important they are for the mood. I think that, these are really easy to get with your diet, and an affordable way of getting them with your diet is, first of all, just get a teaspoon or 2 of, say, hemp seeds or flax seeds in your diet every day. These are, also insoluble fibres. They're really good for gut health. Coming back to that point that I've said, your gut loves fibre. Don't think that carbs are the enemy. Add in fibre. So that's an affordable way to get good fats in. Another one is doing a really simple swap of going, I'm going to have, instead of red meat one night, I might have a serve of fish. Okay, and I know it's expensive, but if you can manage that, it could even be tinned sardines. That's okay. Tinned sardines are high in calcium as well, vitamin D, iron. So if you like them, they're not all tinned fish is great. And I know sardines have a strong flavour, but simple swaps like that. And of course your nuts and seeds will have some good fat. So go to diet first. Look for deficiency signs, talk to a qualified person. So there are specific nutrients. And of course, if you're getting that rainbow of colour, if you're eating 30 different types of plant-based foods per week, which is, I applaud anyone who is doing that, then you really have a greater chance of doing it. So these goals help you get there.
Yeah, brilliant. So in terms then of foods that we should eat, so, what would you say to someone who's feeling mentally unwell and wanted to make that change and start eating more of those foods? What's the best way and the simplest way that we can make changes in our lives?
Sure.
To become more, mentally resilient and fit?
Yeah. And I've talked about a lot today, and it can feel incredibly overwhelming, and particularly when you're not feeling that great in yourself, it's harder to make change. But, first of all, be kind to yourself. Find some support through whatever service that might be, or, the workplace. But it's little by little, to actually create change. Don't ever think it has to be all at once. It doesn't. I've talked about some simple swaps. Swap out, 1 serve of red meat per week for a serve of fish. That's a really easy one. Swap out margarine, let's say, for olive oil somewhere, or just start cooking with extra virgin olive oil. Cut out the canola oils that can be more inflammatory. Exercise. So diet and exercise are these 2 modifiable factors. So modifiable meaning we can control them, right? We can, I know it's easier said than done, but we can have an impact on those. So maybe look at doing that, instead of 5 minutes of sitting, 5 minutes of walking. So just starting is actually the biggest thing. It's like reading, when you're out of that habit, start with 10 minutes and then build on that. But other sort of swaps, like something I really like to talk a lot about is swapping out like your simple carbohydrates. So simple carbs meaning things like white rice, white bread, white pasta, white biscuits. Have a look in your pantry and go, okay, maybe I need to use up what I've got. But, I do that little by little, but I'm going to swap those things for the complex version. So white rice for brown rice, white pasta for wholemeal pasta, white bread for a dense dark bread, biscuits for a handful of nuts, simple things like that. Jam, instead of jam, make it a natural nut butter, like a natural peanut butter or an almond butter, that kind of thing. So these are simple things that you start with, and understand that fibre, not only, like fibre is like the fertilizer for your gut microbiome. It helps, fuel all that good bacteria, but it also helps fill you up. So if you can eat to balance your blood sugar levels, which you do by eating more fibre, more complex fibre, that is, a little bit more protein at every meal, some good fats and less sugar, then what you're going to find is your energy levels are a bit more balanced rather than that up-down that you can get when you're on the sugar roller coaster. And, that up-down with the sugar roller coaster also impacts anxiety as well. Your blood sugar goes down, your anxiety goes up. So, these little changes impact energy, they impact your mood as well, and then it makes it easier to make that next little change. So you're feeling a bit better when you're exercising a bit, and then build on it. So it doesn't have to be big, Just
start small kind of thing.
Absolutely start small, but it's the starting. And I think, we all know that. But find, as I said, find support, interesting things too, like nurture your connections too. We know that's really important for mental health. As humans, we need people around us, some more than others, but, find those things, and even spending time in nature as well. So it might be, just getting to the park at lunchtime and doing that 5-minute walk actually helps you feel a little bit better, and then you can create that next change.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that segues really nicely as well when you talk about support, that, for our listeners, we are their EAP provider. So there's plenty of support available.
Yes.
Consultants like yourself and many
Absolutely.
others who have got years and years of experience are able to actually provide that support. So, get online, book an appointment with us, and also download the Converge app where there's plenty of resources and ways to book an appointment. So I'd like to thank you, Lindy, for joining us. It's been a fantastic episode, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. It's a bit of an honour to be here. So I've really enjoyed it. And thanks so much for making it easy and letting me talk about my passion. So definitely, wonderful.
No. It's been really enjoying. So thank you. And I know our listeners will feel the same. So thank you again, and thank you to our listeners as well for having a listen and learning more about nutrition. And like I said, if you want any more nutrition support or just general mental health support, we're here to help. So book an appointment via our app or our website. And can't wait to see you next time for episode 2 of Thrive, where Wellbeing Converges.
Thank you. Bye.